What is going on, my fellow dungeoneers, and welcome to For the EXP, a YouTube channel dedicated to Dungeons & Dragons and tabletop gaming all alike. My name is Brent, and I will be your host / dungeon master for this show. And today marks a special day where I start a new series. I'm going to be doing some campaign diaries in the style of Matthew Colville, and this first episode is going to be sort of a prologue to the actual campaign itself, giving you a better explanation of what my world is and what's kind of going on. We are about 5 sessions in. We just had our 5th session last game, which is last Saturday, so I'm about 5 sessions behind. I promise you I will catch up and get you guys on track on what's going on. And I will probably put a picture of the map to the right of me, or my left, your right, and kind of so you have a visual aid as to what I'm explaining during the campaign. Now, to give a brief example or explanation of what the campaign is, it's in a small country / continent, whatever you want to call it, named Astria. Astria is probably no bigger than the state of Kansas within the United States, so it's about 300 miles from corner to corner. So that's pretty small for a D&D country / continent to start in. And I kind of like that because it's unusual, and it's another way of starting small with your D&D campaign. Now, with my map, I've left plenty of open space originally before I actually got my players together so that I could add more cities if I needed to, because when I was creating this world, I was designing it into where out of the players I picked, they could be from Astria instead of being like kind of shoehorned into the world itself. They could help me collaborate and build this world into what it can be. Now, the process I went through to get all my players was actually very extensive compared to most people. I posted a interest post on Twitter, and I posted in an LFG subreddit for D&D on Reddit, and I kind of laid out my entire expectations, what I was looking for, and what my overall goal was, which was just to have a group of players with similar minds. Wanted to do a good balance of RP and perhaps plenty of combat, and it didn't hurt that we were all critters. If you don't know what a critter is like part of the Critical Role community, which is where Matthew Mercer and a few voice actors play Dungeons and Dragons on twitch.tv/Geek and Sundry every Thursday night, 7 p.m. Pacific time, 9 p.m. Central for me. Anyway, that's enough advertising for another show, but that's basically a good idea of what type of players I was looking for. We were kind of like, all of us who know what Critical Role is kind of want that party to happen. Excuse me, I have a little bit of a cold left over from the past week. So anyway, I had made these posts in the LFG and on Reddit, and I had gotten plenty of replies to my campaign, because I firmly believe that for every one Dungeon Master, there's hundreds of players, if not 1,000 players. But, there's no real proof to set that up, but I digress. And I gave myself a month before even the session 0. I told everyone who applied this was what was going to happen, because I wanted to give myself not only enough time to go through the emails, but to fully talk to everyone and get to know them, so I better understood how they were going to play. So I got 10s and 20s worth of emails. I broke it down to 6 players who I felt would make a good match, and we had our session 1. Now, again, I'm going to further explain how the Astria works as a country and what's going on. That's not necessarily campaign related, but so you guys have a good idea of what's going on. There are 4 main races: elves, Underdark denizens, not tieflings, but halflings, and dragonborn. Now, every race can be used in this world. It's not set up just to be halfling, elves, Underdark denizens, and dragonborn. Every race is in here. Those are the 4 most popular, I guess I should say, the ones with the most population. I kind of came up with that while world building when I decided to roll on a dice table, kind of deciding. I rolled 4 times and came up with those 4 by using the Elemental Evil Player's Companion and the PHB. Those were the 4 I came up with. I actually originally rolled Deep Gnomes for that, but I said, why stop at deep gnomes, so then I include all of them. To better understand the political landscape of Astria, think of it kind of like ancient Greece, where it's one country, but each city was its own domain. Every city was a city-state. There was no unified government. And that is why I entitled the campaign Astria, A Nation Divided, where it's kind of going to be, I feel like it's going to be centralized on unifying the country to face a great threat. That might be a little spoilery, especially for my players if they are watching this, which I hope they would be, and at the same time I kind of don't want them to watch because I'm really bad at summarizing and not giving out spoilers because I like to talk about everything. That's probably about the worst problem about being a DM for me, is I want to tell everyone everything about what's going on. So the 4 main cities that I would say are the most important to keep track of within Astria is Inland Nolore, Gonfarum, Talmakai, and Blood Gulch Crossing. These are the 4 biggest cities within the country itself. Inland Nolore is a city located within the Inla Woods on the northern end of Astria. And this is the city of elves. It's wood elves and high elves. And it's kind of surrounded by a very dense forest known as the Inla Woods. And they kind of keep to themselves and do their own thing. Like I said before, every city is its own state. Blood Gulch Crossing is like northern central area of Astria, just north of Astria's Maw, and this is kind of like a melting pot of people. There's humans there, there's dwarves there, there's half-orcs there, mostly human I would say, and a good blend of everything else. And there is Gonfarum, which is the Underdark Denizen city, which actually used to be a dwarven city that in the first age of Astria had been annexed by the Underdark Denizens when they invaded it and kicked all the dwarves out and took it for their own. And I know there's probably a lot of questions of why would there be Underdark people sitting on the surface world. Well, there's reasons for that I would like everyone watching to find out if they follow along the campaign Diaries. There's an actual reason for that, but I want to save that for a later video. And then Talmakai, which is the city of halflings. And the city of halflings is located in the southernmost, southeastern or southwesternmost of Astria, and it is in the Vasta Morte desert along a sea port town kind of thing. I haven't actually named the sea. I don't know why I haven't named the sea. I just, whenever I look at the map, I go, oh, I need to name that, but I just never do. And just being a DM and being a father, and just life goes on, and I will eventually get to it. It definitely has a name. I just haven't thought of it yet. So failure as a DM. But, and then I'm sure you're wondering, how does the Dragonborn fit in? Where do they live? They're supposed to be a main race, but I haven't mentioned a main city for them. Well, that's because there's not really a main city for the Dragonborn. To better understand like the interracial political landscape is halflings and Dragonborns have actually had sort of a tension built about them. There's a long history of hatred between the two. They're not necessarily warring, but it's kind of like that weird Cold War-ish we hate each other kind of things, but we're never going to really fight each other. There has been lore stated that long ago, within the early ages of Astria, that the Dragonborn and the Halflings shared the desert of the Vasta Mordley Badlands, and they eventually came into a territorial dispute, war ensued, and somehow, someway, the Halflings won. That's more lore that I'm looking forward to my players figuring out and ultimately explaining to you guys in these future campaign diaries. To further explain the Dragonborn and their current situation, that ever since they lost their landscape or their homes within the Vasta Morte desert, is that they became a nomadic race. To better describe them, think of the Khajiit in Skyrim. They kind of travel around in caravans. There's no real trust to them for any of the cities. They kind of aren't allowed within the cities for the most part. If they want to sell any wares, they have to do it outside the gates. And so there's sort of like a unified sort of racism to it, but it's kind of more of a blind racism because they don't know if what happened all those years was necessarily their fault or the halflings' fault. And again, they'll find out within the lore of the campaign itself. The Underdark denizens have always been sort of a looming cloud ever since they took over Gone Farm. We all know that Underdark people are generally evil people, but they've almost sat there on on one of the mantles of Astria's Maw, which is the centralmost mountainscape. It's very sharp and jagged, and it's kind of they have a really good high ground position, strategic position, and a lot of people have just never tried taking it back. They just had too good of a high ground and strategic position, as I said. And so, even though no one has ever gone to war with them except for the dwarves from way back in the First Age, and they've never really done anything since then, they're kind of like a looming storm cloud waiting for shit to go down. When are they going to pull their shit off? That's basically, a good summarization of how the political landscape works. The four landscapes, as you'll probably see on the map, is there's the northern side is grassland, Astria Mall is the belt, and it's some high mountainscapes and sharp jagged peaks, and then to the south is the Vasta Morte Badlands, and then you could probably see that there's an island named Kara that was from a character's backstory. And you know what? Let's go ahead and get into the characters. When I formed the party, I broke it down to 6 players, and we got to and that was what I was going to run for the game. I had never run a game for more than 4 people at one time, so it was super scary for me. I prefer smaller parties, but I was up for the challenge. So what I ended up with was a high elf rogue, a human cleric, a dwarven fighter, a Eladrin or summer Eladrin sorcerer, a halfling bard, and a Goliath druid. Now, the high elf rogue was in a sense very Percy-like, from just kind of, if you like Critical Role, you'll understand that. But he's sort of like a nobleman whose family got attacked, and he ended up in a new city, and basically his whole goal was to find out who attacked his family and to take them out. So that was his overall goal. I forgot his name, but I'll explain to you here in a minute why I don't remember his name. The Summer Eladrin sorcerer, his name is Aelon. He's from the Feywild, if you know where Eladrin come from. His whole spiel is that he wanted to fulfill sort of like a scholarly quest to gain this higher up title that would take years of study and practice. And instead of taking all those years to do this, he decided that he wanted to prove his worth by showing more practical uses of his study instead of actually just sitting and reading books. And it's funny because his studies, the way the Eladrin work, they're very artsy people, music inclined, art inclined, so it almost sets them up to be bards, but he chose to be sorcerer. And through his backstory, there was a cataclysmic event in the Feywild that led to them gaining the aid of a ancient silver dragon, whom gave his bloodline to give these Summer Eladrin, or the Eladrin in general, magical powers. And over the years and ages, the bloodline diluted, so the sorcerer trait had gotten thinner and thinner, and Aelon became one of the few who actually had the draconic life, or a draconic energy within them. So his body also has patches of scales showing through his skin, and it's just a really cool character. Has kind of been the main mouthpiece of the party so far. There is Durgan Mythhammer, the human cleric, which has a kind of a unique backstory. He was obviously human as a baby, and then as his family was traveling in a caravan and got attacked by a group of orcs, and then he was taken in by a dwarven clan known as the Mythhammers. His whole spiel was that he was going on this thing called a Sojourn, kind of a spiritual quest to Moradin, because as a child he grew up kind of in a mercantile guild, had dealings with the Drow actually, many places throughout Astria, and then eventually he ran into an actual encounter with a drow. He almost died, and he gave his life to Moradin, the dwarven gods. And part of his whole goal was to gain the honor to use a warhammer in battle as a human who basically is a dwarf in nature, as he was raised to kind of he was raised in a dwarven community. He also didn't feel like he was quite yet worthy to wield a warhammer, and so part of his sojourn is to figure out his spiritual quest, complete it, and can gain the right to wield a warhammer. And it's really cool. You'll figure it out, or I'll explain it better as the campaign goes on. And there is Alton, the halfling bard, who was a noble, part of like a noble family, not necessarily a king or queen's noble, but like a higher up social status noble's child of like a mercantile trade who lived in Talmakai, and he didn't quite agree with what was going on with the halflings and dragonborn and wanted to find out what was going on with that. I didn't get too much of a explanation from the druid Goliath about his backstory. All I know is it was supposed to be a gypsy thing, and he just was wandering the earth, or wandering Astria, kind of looking for sort of a goal to find. Norik, the dwarf fighter, was actually not from Astria. He came from a whole nother country looking for a friend within Astria who was looking to avenge the dwarves against the Durgar, the Drow, and the Sniverbin or Deep Gnomes, and kind of gain the city of Gonfarum back. And a cool quirk about his dwarf is that he's sort of a armor aficionado, so he's looking for different armor styles and just overall cool things to find throughout Astria, being a foreigner while looking for his friend who he hasn't quite found yet. So that is all the characters within the group. Now, I say there's are some of the names that I don't remember because we actually lost 2 players, which was the High Elf Rogue and the Goliath Druid, because the Halfling Rogue player just didn't quite mesh well as I thought he would, and the Druid Goliath player, he was an hour and a half late to our first session, and that was mostly due to time zone constraints. He was from Australia and we are all in America, and we tried it, and when we didn't want to waste anyone's time, we just wanted to rip the bandage quick and just move on and with these players, and there was no hard feelings, at least for me. It was nothing personal, and we dropped down to 4 players to my comfort zone. So we had the Halfling Bard, the Summer Legend Sorcerer, the Human Cleric, and the Dwarf Fighter. Now, in the next episode of my campaign diaries, we're going to go over the first session of the campaign, obviously, and I'll explain to you what happened and the shenanigans the party got into. And this is going to be with the 6 players because we didn't actually find out that we were dropping to 4 until after the first session. So looking forward to making that video for you. I'm sorry about my recording schedule. I'm a father, I have a job, and planning for game sessions takes me 2 weeks. And, just because I have to look at the big picture and then shrink it down, and I'm really bad at summarizing, and I'm the type of DM who tries to be improv but probably over preps more than he should, but that's just all excuses. Again, thank you so much to my subscribers who are still sticking around, all 37 of you. Hopefully I'll reach 100 subscribers and become a Dungeon Tuber level 2. Again, thank you so much for watching this prologue to Astria, A Nation Divided. And always remember, guys, no matter what it is you do in life, do it for the XP. Thank you and have a good day.